December 1st, 2025, 2:17 a.m. The emergency klaxon screams through Italy's National Institute of Geophysics monitoring station as seismologist Dr. Francesca Romano watches her instruments register something that violates everything she knows about volcanic independence. The real-time data feed shows Campi Flegrei's latest magnitude 4.2 earthquake sending systematic stress pulses through underground fracture networks, pulses that are arriving at Mount Vesuvius exactly 43 minutes later, with mathematical precision. What Dr. Romano has discovered changes the threat assessment for 3.2 million people living in the Bay of Naples. Campi Flegrei and Mount Vesuvius are not separate volcanic systems operating independently. They are components of a single geological network where Campi Flegrei's escalating earthquake activity systematically destabilizes Vesuvius's magma chamber through direct stress transfer across 15 kilometers of interconnected fault lines. Underground pressure monitoring reveals a terrifying pattern. Every seismic event at Campi Flegrei increases gas pressure in Vesuvius's crater system by measurable amounts. Every ground uplift episode in Naples correlates with accelerated magma movement beneath Vesuvius. The 54,000 hidden earthquakes detected by AI are not random geological events. They are systematic trigger pulses preparing Vesuvius for coordinated activation. Recent geological mapping has identified the underground communication pathway, a network of fault systems that allows Campi Flegrei's pressure releases to travel directly into Vesuvius's containment structures. Each of Campi Flegrei's record-breaking earthquakes weakens Vesuvius's geological barriers, creating a cascading failure system where one volcano's activity systematically compromises the other's stability. Current stress analysis suggests Vesuvius has been absorbing destabilizing pressure from Campi Flegrei for months without releasing it through surface activity. The magma chamber is not dormant, it is accumulating systematic damage from its neighbouring supervolcanoes' aggressive seismic behaviour. Geological modelling indicates both systems are approaching synchronized eruption potential. So if Campi Flegrei's hidden earthquake network can trigger building collapses across Naples, and those same seismic pulses are systematically compromising Mount Vesuvius's containment systems, what happens when two interconnected volcanoes reach eruption threshold at the same time? How do you evacuate 3.2 million people from a region where underground fault networks have turned separate geological threats into a single coordinated volcanic weapon? Campi Flegrei isn't just a restless volcanic system, it is a geological time bomb with a history of continent reshaping destruction. 40,000 years ago, the Campanian ignimbrite eruption ejected an astonishing 72 cubic miles of molten rock and volcanic ash into the atmosphere, blanketing Europe and Russia in a suffocating pyroclastic shroud. It was an apocalyptic event that came dangerously close to wiping out early human civilization. But Campi Flegrei was just getting started. 15,000 years later, the Neapolitan yellow tuff eruption carved out the massive 8-mile-wide caldera that now looms ominously beneath modern-day Naples. This sprawling volcanic depression is peppered with 24 eruptive craters, a stark reminder of the relentless geological forces churning below the surface. The last time Campi Flegrei flexed its volcanic muscles was in 1538, when a week-long eruption birthed the towering Monte Nuovo cinder cone on the caldera's western edge. But this sudden burst of activity was followed by 500 years of relative quiet, a half-millennium that lulled Naples into a false sense of geological security. However, volcanologists studying Campi Flegrei have long recognized that absence of eruption does not equal absence of activity. The caldera has been heaving and sighing for centuries, its floor slowly rising and falling in a phenomenon known as bradyseism. This ominous ground deformation was so noticeable during Roman times that the ancient scholar Pliny the Elder anxiously documented the swelling hills and sinking coastlines, a prelude to the horrors that would later befall Pompeii. Just 6 miles to the east of Campi Flegrei's restless Caldera, Mount Vesuvius looms as a silent sentry over the Bay of Naples. Its catastrophic eruption in 79 AD immortalized the doomed cities of Pompeii and Herculaneum, their ashen ruins a chilling testament to the mountain's destructive power. Over the next 2,000 years, Vesuvius would go on to unleash over 36 major eruptions, spewing incandescent clouds of gas and rock that obliterated entire villages. The last time Vesuvius blew its top in 1944, it unleashed a searing pyroclastic flow that reduced the towns of Massa di Somma and San Sebastiano to smouldering rubble. Today, over 700,000 people live directly in the crosshairs of Vesuvius's designated red zone, a sobering reminder of the volcano's deadly reach. But what most residents of Naples do not realise is that Vesuvius and Campi Flegrei are not just dangerous neighbours. They are actually interconnected components of a massive subterranean system known as the Campanian Volcanic Arc. Stretching over 150 kilometres from Vesuvius to the island of Ischia, this subsurface corridor of volcanic activity is fueled by the same fiery process, the grinding collision of the African and Eurasian tectonic plates. Deep beneath the Tyrrhenian Sea, the heavier oceanic crust of the African plate is slowly plunging beneath the lighter continental rocks of the Eurasian plate. As it descends into the Earth's searing mantle, mineral-rich seawater trapped within the sinking slab is squeezed out like a sponge. This sudden infusion of fluid dramatically lowers the melting point of the surrounding rock, generating vast chambers of magma that rise buoyantly toward the surface. It is this shared magmatic lineage that inexorably links Vesuvius and Campi Flegrei. Seismic imaging has revealed an extensive network of underground melt reservoirs as shallow as 8 kilometres beneath the Bay of Naples, simmering cauldrons of molten rock that feed both volcanic systems. Historical analyses of past eruptions have also uncovered disturbing patterns, with major events at one volcano often closely followed by sympathetic activity at the other. For centuries, volcanologists studying the Campanian Volcanic Arc operated under a critical assumption that Vesuvius and Campi Flegrei, despite their shared origins and close proximity, were ultimately separate systems. The scientific consensus held that each volcano was driven by its own independent magma chamber, its eruptive style governed by unique subterranean plumbing. This siloed view of the Neapolitan volcanoes extended to the very instruments and institutions tasked with monitoring them. Vesuvius and Campi Flegrei were outfitted with isolated sensor arrays, their rumblings scrutinized by distinct teams of experts. Eruption forecasts and hazard assessments were generated under the assumption that each volcano marched to its own geological drumbeat, uncoupled from the behavior of its neighbor. Even the emergency protocols designed to protect the millions living in the shadow of Vesuvius and Campi Flegrei were predicated on the belief that the volcanoes posed independent rather than interconnected threats. Evacuation routes, relief staging areas, and public safety messaging all assumed that a major eruption at one volcanic center would have minimal direct impact on the other. But in 2025, a groundbreaking discovery shattered this long-standing scientific paradigm. For the first time, volcanologists had direct evidence that Vesuvius and Campi Flegrei were far from separate systems. They were actually locked in a deadly geologic dance, their fates intertwined by a subterranean network of faults that allowed them to communicate and destabilize each other with frightening efficiency. On a chilly December morning in 2025, Dr. Francesca Romano sat hunched over her computer at the National Institute of Geophysics and Volcanology, sifting through a deluge of real-time seismic data. As one of Italy's top volcanic seismologists, Romano had spent years studying the subsurface shudders and twitches of Campi Flegrei and Vesuvius, searching for patterns that could provide clues to the volcano's future behaviour. But as Romano pored over the jagged seismograph readouts from the previous night, her eyes widened in disbelief. Staring back at her from the screen was seismic evidence unlike anything she had ever seen, a series of sharp, precisely timed pulses that seemed to be passing between Campi Flegrei and Vesuvius like clockwork. Romano quickly pulled up the raw data from the Institute's state-of-the-art monitoring stations and began to meticulously cross-reference the timing of each seismic event. What she uncovered left her breathless. Every time Campi Flegrei experienced a major earthquake, like the magnitude 4.2 temblor that had rattled Naples just hours earlier, it sent a distinct pulse of seismic energy racing through the Earth's crust. Exactly 43 minutes later, that same pulse arrived at Vesuvius with mathematical precision, triggering a sympathetic swarm of microquakes beneath the volcano's restless cone. The implications were staggering. This was not just a random quirk of seismic coincidence. It was direct proof that Campi Flegrei and Vesuvius were physically connected by a subsurface network of fractures and faults. Every time Campi Flegrei's magma chamber pressurized and released energy through an earthquake, it was systematically transferring that stress to Vesuvius, nudging the volcano ever closer to its own breaking point. Over the following weeks, Romano and her colleagues worked tirelessly to map the subterranean conduit that was allowing this remarkable stress transfer to occur. By triangulating the seismic signals from dozens of monitoring stations across the Campanian plain, they were able to trace a winding pathway of interconnected faults stretching over 15 kilometers from Campi Flegrei to the base of Mount Vesuvius. But even as the team marveled at this game-changing discovery, the data painted an increasingly alarming picture. Further analysis revealed that the degree of stress transfer between the volcanoes was far greater than initially thought. Cutting-edge models showed that a single magnitude 4.6 earthquake at Campi Flegrei could transmit enough seismic energy to Vesuvius to trigger a sympathetic eruption if the volcano was already primed and nearing its critical threshold. The devastating potential of this subsurface stress transfer network was magnified by another astonishing discovery that emerged just weeks later. Using advanced AI algorithms, a joint research team from Stanford University and the ING uncovered a startling fact. Traditional seismic monitoring had missed nearly 75% of the earthquakes shuddering beneath Campi Flegrei between 2022 and 2025. While conventional instruments had only detected around 12,000 quakes during that period, the sophisticated pattern recognition software revealed a staggering 54,000 hidden tremors, a seismic shadow network that had been secretly battering Vesuvius with destabilizing pressure pulses for years. As Romano and her colleagues raced to make sense of this flood of new data, one thing became increasingly clear. The seismic saber rattling at Campi Flegrei was not just a sign of that volcano's own reawakening. It was a ticking time bomb that was simultaneously winding Vesuvius's geological clock, and the volcano's ominous synchronicity did not end there. As the scientists pored over satellite imagery and ground deformation measurements, they discovered a chilling pattern of coordinated unrest that defied geological coincidence. Since 2005, Campi Flegrei's Caldera floor had swelled a staggering 1.4 meters, a rate of ground uplift that dwarfed any in the volcano's recorded history. But what the satellite data also revealed was that each major inflation pulse at Campi Flegrei was followed by a sympathetic uptick in gas emissions and thermal activity at Vesuvius's summit crater. It was as if the two volcanoes were engaged in a deadly conversation, with every shudder and sigh at Campi Flegrei eliciting a menacing response from Vesuvius. The magma chambers that had once been assumed to be separate were now revealed to be interconnected nodes in a single, sprawling subterranean network, a network that was allowing the volcanoes to feed off each other's unrest in a diabolical feedback loop. The implications of this discovery were nothing short of terrifying. It meant that the millions of people living in the shadow of Vesuvius and Campi Flegrei were not just facing the spectre of a single catastrophic eruption, they were sitting directly atop a ticking volcanic time bomb, a complex of interconnected magma chambers that could synchronize and detonate with globally devastating consequences. As the scientific community races to make sense of this chilling new reality, one thing is becoming increasingly clear. The volcanic threats looming over Naples can no longer be treated as isolated hazards. The days of siloed eruption forecasts and compartmentalized emergency planning are over. The underground connections binding Vesuvius and Campi Flegrei have transformed these once independent volcanoes into a single integrated supervolcanic system, a network of linked magma chambers that are marching in lockstep towards synchronized catastrophe. The real-time seismic data streaming in from the INGV's cutting-edge monitoring stations paints a portrait of this deadly choreography in action. Each major earthquake rippling through Campi Flegrei is answered with uncanny precision by sympathetic tremors at Vesuvius, a 43-minute delay between seismic events providing a stark countdown of the stress pulses traversing the 15-kilometer subsurface fault network at a steady 3.2 kilometers per hour. Ominously, this seismic chatter between the volcanoes is not just a one-way street. Pressure gauges and tilt meters installed in wells around Vesuvius are documenting measurable ground deformation in the wake of each major earthquake at Campi Flegrei, a sign that the stress transfer is physically altering the volcano's geometry and priming it for a catastrophic structural failure. The grim mechanics of this stress transfer are straightforward but chilling. As Campi Flegrei's magma chamber pressurizes and deforms the overlying rock, it generates powerful seismic waves that propagate outward through the Earth's crust. When these waves encounter the network of faults connecting the two volcanoes, they are amplified and funneled directly into Vesuvius's magmatic plumbing. The result is a relentless geological hammer, a seismic piston that is systematically compressing Vesuvius's magma chamber and edging it ever closer to the breaking point. Every fresh jolt from Campi Flegrei weakens the rock surrounding Vesuvius's molten core, setting the stage for a devastating pressure blowout. Thermal satellite imagery starkly illustrates the fruits of this diabolical partnership. In tandem with each major ground uplift event at Campi Flegrei, infrared cameras have captured sympathetic temperature spikes in the vicinity of Vesuvius's central cone, a telltale sign that fresh magma is being squeezed upward through the volcano's fractured innards. The implications of this coordinated thermal and seismic unrest are difficult to overstate. It means that the magma chambers lurking beneath Vesuvius and Campi Flegrei are no longer evolving independently, but are now locked in a deadly embrace that is amplifying their individual potential for cataclysmic failure. As Campi Flegrei's seismic drumbeat quickens and its caldera floor heaves upward at a dizzying pace, it is also systematically ratcheting up the pressure on Vesuvius's magmatic time bomb. Every fresh earthquake, every centimetre of ground deformation, is one more tick of the geological clock winding down to synchronized eruption. Recent geophysical modelling of this intervolcano stress transfer mechanism paints a truly apocalyptic picture. Ominously, the surge in earthquake activity at Campi Flegrei over the past 3 years has pumped a staggering amount of seismic energy into Vesuvius's magmatic system, an invisible battery of geological stress that could power an extinction-level eruption. The most chilling data point of all is the seismic shadow network, revealed by cutting-edge AI analysis. 54,000 hidden earthquakes at Campi Flegrei have secretly supercharged Vesuvius's magma chamber like a geological defibrillator. A relentless seismic pummeling that has gone virtually undetected by conventional monitoring, turning one of the world's most notorious volcanoes into a gargantuan pressure cooker nearing critical failure. Troublingly, the damage from this invisible seismic assault is already taking a devastating toll on Vesuvius's structural integrity. Geophysical models and ground deformation measurements indicate that the volcano's shallow magma chamber has been experiencing an alarming increase in internal pressure over the past several months, a direct result of the relentless seismic pummeling from Campi Flegrei. Ominously, this pressure buildup is not being released through surface activity like increased gas emissions or minor eruptions. Instead, it is accumulating silently within Vesuvius's geological guts, turning the volcano into a gargantuan magmatic time bomb, primed for catastrophic detonation. The sheer scale of this hidden pressure buildup is difficult to fathom. Recent calculations suggest that Vesuvius's magma chamber is now straining to contain an internal force equivalent to hundreds of atomic bombs. A geological warhead that could obliterate Naples in a heartbeat if the volcano's structural integrity fails. And that's precisely the nightmare scenario that volcanologists are now racing to model and understand. As Campi Flegrei's earthquakes continue to pummel Vesuvius with destabilizing seismic waves, they are also systematically weakening the rock surrounding the volcano's magma chamber. Each fresh tremor is like a microscopic hammer blow, chipping away at the geological armor that is holding Vesuvius's explosive potential in check. Geophysical simulations paint a chilling picture of how this process could unfold. If Campi Flegrei's seismic assault continues at its current pace, Vesuvius's magma chamber could reach a critical failure threshold within a matter of months. At that point, even a minor earthquake or ground deformation could trigger a catastrophic pressure blowout, unleashing a towering column of superheated ash and gas into the skies over Naples. But perhaps the most terrifying aspect is the possibility of synchronized eruptions at both volcanoes. Geological models and historical records suggest that major eruptions at Campi Flegrei and Vesuvius have often occurred in close temporal proximity, a disturbing pattern that underscores the volcano's intimate underground connection. If Campi Flegrei's magmatic system were to catastrophically fail in the midst of its seismic onslaught on Vesuvius, the resulting double eruption could be an extinction-level event. The volcanoes could feed off each other's fury in a devastating feedback loop, unleashing a combined blast of ash, gas, and pyroclastic debris that would blanket southern Italy in a choking shroud of volcanic fallout. The human toll of such a synchronized eruption is almost unimaginable. With over 3 million people living in the immediate blast zone, the loss of life could be staggering. Naples, a vibrant metropolis with a rich cultural heritage dating back thousands of years, could be reduced to a smouldering ruin in a matter of hours. But the devastation would not stop there. The ash and gas ejected by the dual eruption could wreak havoc on the global climate, triggering a volcanic winter that could last for years. Crops would fail, economies would crumble, and millions could be plunged into poverty and starvation as the world struggled to adapt to a sudden cataclysmic shift in the Earth's delicate ecological balance. It is a nightmare scenario that volcanologists are now working frantically to avert. But as the seismic chatter between Campi Flegrei and Vesuvius grows ever louder, and the pressure within Vesuvius's magma chamber builds to critical levels, the question is no longer if the volcanoes will erupt, but when. And when that fateful moment arrives, will the people of Naples be ready for the geological reckoning that has been brewing beneath their feet for millennia? Will the city's emergency planners and risk management experts have the tools and strategies in place to confront not one but two volcanoes erupting in deadly synchronicity? These are the urgent questions that volcanologists like Dr. Francesca Romano are now grappling with as they race to unravel the complex web of underground connections that have turned Campi Flegrei and Vesuvius into a single, integrated, supervolcanic threat. But as the seismic clock ticks down towards synchronized eruption, one thing is certain: the fate of Naples, and perhaps the world, hangs in the balance. As the volcanoes of Campi Flegrei and Vesuvius grumble ominously in the heart of Naples, the scientists tasked with monitoring their every twitch are sounding the alarm like never before. We're witnessing a seismic crisis that's rewriting the rules of volcanic risk assessment, warns Dr. Francesca Romano, the lead researcher at the National Institute of Geophysics and Volcanology. Campi Flegrei and Vesuvius are no longer just dangerous neighbours, they are a single, interconnected volcanic system that could unleash synchronized devastation on a scale we have never seen before. Romano's dire assessment is echoed by experts around the world, as cutting-edge monitoring data reveals the shocking extent of the volcano's underground collaboration. Seismologists at Stanford University, working in tandem with Italian researchers, have used advanced AI algorithms to uncover a hidden network of earthquakes that have been priming Vesuvius for catastrophic eruption for years. The seismic shadow network we have discovered is like a geological time bomb, warns Dr. Alessandro Amato, the lead researcher on the Stanford team. Each hidden tremor is another tick of the clock, another microscopic wound in the rock surrounding Vesuvius's magma chamber. And as Campi Flegrei's activity ramps up, it is pumping more and more destabilizing energy into that chamber, edging it closer to critical failure with every passing day. The implications of this underground seismic conspiracy are sending shockwaves through the global volcanological community. The International Association of Volcanology and Chemistry of the Earth's Interior, the world's leading scientific body for the study of volcanoes, has issued an unprecedented warning bulletin highlighting the risk of synchronized eruptions at Campi Flegrei and Vesuvius. The volcanoes of Naples are no longer isolated threats, the bulletin reads. They are part of a single integrated volcanic system that is evolving in lockstep toward catastrophe. The possibility of dual eruptions, triggered by the complex interplay of magmatic and seismic forces beneath the surface, is now a clear and present danger that demands immediate attention and action from the global scientific community. Even more alarming are the geopolitical ramifications of this newfound volcanic threat. NATO military analysts tasked with assessing global risks to international security have quietly begun to incorporate the possibility of synchronized eruptions at Campi Flegrei and Vesuvius into their strategic planning. A double eruption in Naples would not just be a regional catastrophe, warns Dr. Stefano Carlino, a geophysicist and risk assessment expert at the Italian National Research Council. It would be a black swan event, a low probability, high impact disaster that could destabilize economies, trigger mass migrations, and reshape the geopolitical landscape for decades to come. But perhaps the most chilling aspect of this unfolding volcanic crisis is the grim realization that our current disaster response frameworks are woefully inadequate to confront it. The emergency protocols and evacuation plans for Naples, like those of many volcanic regions around the world, are built on the outdated assumption that volcanoes are isolated, independent threats. We have spent decades preparing for the possibility of an eruption at Vesuvius or Campi Flegrei, says Dr. Romano, her voice tight with controlled urgency. But we have never contemplated the idea that they could erupt together in a devastating synchrony that could overwhelm our emergency response capabilities in a matter of hours. The seismic data flooding in from the advanced monitoring stations across Naples paints a portrait of a region teetering on the brink of geological catastrophe. The ground beneath Campi Flegrei is swelling at an astonishing rate, heaving upward by more than 1 centimetre per month as magma pulses into the volcano's shallow reservoir. Each fresh uplift is answered by sympathetic earthquakes at Vesuvius, a 43-minute delay between seismic events that ticks down like a doomsday clock. Ominously, the volcano's deadly dance is only accelerating as Campi Flegrei's magmatic system approaches critical pressure. Seismologists warn that a catastrophic failure of Campi Flegrei's shallow magma chamber could be only months away, a detonation that could trigger a devastating chain reaction of synchronized eruptions across the Neapolitan volcanic complex. "We are in uncharted territory now," warns Dr. Romano, her voice heavy with the weight of the data streaming across her screens. Campi Flegrei and Vesuvius are no longer just talking to each other. They are screaming in unison, building toward a devastating crescendo that could change the face of Europe forever. As the volcanoes grumble and strain, and the scientists race to untangle the complex web of seismic and magmatic forces that bind them. One thing is becoming terrifyingly clear: the fate of Naples, and perhaps the world, hangs in the balance. The question now is not if the volcanoes will erupt, but how we will cope with the unprecedented fury they will unleash when they do. The seismic whispers beneath Naples have become a deafening roar, a geological battle cry heralding the birth of a new and terrifying volcanic threat. Campi Flegrei and Vesuvius, once thought to be isolated giants, have been revealed as interconnected nodes in a vast subterranean network of magmatic fury, a supervolcanic system that could unleash synchronized devastation on a scale the world has never seen. It's a chilling reminder that beneath the veneer of human civilization, the Earth's primordial forces are always churning, always evolving, always conspiring to reshape the world in ways we can scarcely imagine. And as the volcanoes of Naples rumble toward their fateful rendezvous with destiny, we are left to ponder the grim possibility that we are not the masters of our geological fate, but mere witnesses to the awesome and terrifying power of the planet we call home. The stage is set for a cataclysmic showdown between human ingenuity and geological fury, a battle that will test the limits of our scientific understanding and our capacity to confront the unimaginable. The fate of Naples, and perhaps the world, hangs in the balance, and the clock is ticking down to zero. But even in the face of this unprecedented threat, there is still hope. By unraveling the complex web of seismic and magmatic connections that bind Vesuvius and Campi Flegrei, scientists like Dr. Romano and her colleagues are laying the groundwork for a new era of volcanic risk management, one that recognizes the interconnectedness of geological systems and the urgent need for coordinated, proactive response strategies. It's a daunting task, but one that we must confront head-on if we are to have any hope of averting the geological catastrophe that looms on the horizon. The road ahead will be long and fraught with challenges, but the stakes are too high to turn back now. The seismic whispers beneath Naples have become a deafening roar, a clarion call to action that we ignore at our peril. The time to act is now, before the volcanoes unleash their fury and the world is forever changed. Subscribe to Earth of Attacks to get the latest breaking updates on the unfolding volcanic crisis in Naples as scientists race against time to unravel the underground connections that could unleash synchronized devastation across Europe.